Hi friends, this is Dr. S.K. Pandey with a new compendium of 40 questions on Indian polity. Today I will be talking on salient features of Indian Constitution. So here comes the first question. The first question is which amendment of Indian Constitution is known as the mini constitution? I repeat the question, which amendment of Indian Constitution is known as the mini constitution? Friends, it is 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976 that is called the mini constitution. This is called the mini constitution because by making 42nd Amendment in 1976, so many new provisions were added to the Constitution of India, like fundamental duties were incorporated. Friends, fundamental duties were not right from the inception of the Constitution of India. These were included in 1976 on the basis of the recommendations of Swarna Singh Committee. Next question comes, in which case did the Supreme Court rule the basic structure of Indian Constitution? You have to mention the name of the case in which the Supreme Court of India ruled the basic structure of Indian Constitution. So the answer is Keshwanand Bharti case 1973. Friends, Keshwanand Bharti case 1973 was one of the major cases of Supreme Court. In this case, the court ruled the basic structure of the Constitution, which means that there are some provisions in the Constitution which cannot be amended even by using Article 368. Article 368 gives the Parliament of India the power to amend the Constitution. So as per the ruling of the Supreme Court of India in Keshwanand Bharti case 1973, the Parliament of India can amend all parts of the Constitution, including Part 3, but cannot impact the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Question 3 is, what is Article 368 of Indian Constitution? Friends, Article 368 mentions the amendment process in the Constitution. This constitutional provision gives the power to the Parliament of India to make amendments in the Constitution. Question number 4, which constitution in the world is the lengthiest of all written constitution? So answer is India. In 1949, there were 395 articles, 22 parts, and each schedule in the Constitution of India. So Constitution of India is the lengthiest constitution in the world. Question number 5, which is the biggest source of Indian Constitution? It's a very easy question, but very important. So friends, the answer is Government of India Act 1935. Government of India Act 1935 is the biggest source of Indian Constitution. Almost 200 articles have been taken from Government of India Act 1935 in the Constitution of India. Question number 6. Question number 6 is very important. The fundamental rights have been taken from which constitution in the Constitution of India? From where are the fundamental rights taken in the Indian Constitution? This is the Constitution of United States of America, from where the Constitution of India provision the fundamental rights, having been inspired from the Constitution of the United States of America. Question number 7 is, from where are the DPSP taken? DPSP stands for Directive Principles of State Policy. DPSP have been taken from the Constitution of Ireland. Question number 8 is, from where are the basis of parliamentarian system taken in the Constitution of India. In other words, the parliamentarian system of India is inspired by which constitution in the world? So this is the Constitution of United Kingdom. The British Constitution inspires the fundamental structure of Indian polity, that is parliamentarian system. Question number 9 is, what is a rigid constitution? Friends, constitutions are of two types, rigid constitutions or flexible constitution. Let me tell you that a rigid constitution is a constitution which cannot be amended easily. A rigid constitution is a constitution which cannot be amended easily. There are some procedures to be adopted for making any amendments in the constitution. So these types of constitutions are called rigid constitution. Question number 10 is, what is a flexible constitution? Friends, flexible constitution is a type of constitution which can be amended easily, and it does not have a very long and complex procedure to be adopted to amend the constitution. For example, the British Constitution. The British Constitution is flexible, and it comes in the category of flexible. There is no particular process to amend the British Constitution, and there is not a difference between ordinary law and the constitutional law in Britain. Question number 11. Where is the word federation used in the Constitution of India? Very important question, and this question has been asked several times in the competitive exams. So the term federation is used nowhere in the Constitution of India. Nowhere in the Constitution of India the word federation has been used. Instead, in place of federation, union of states has been used. Article 1 of Indian Constitution mentions India as the union of states, which means that India is not an outcome of agreement among different territories, unlike the United States of America. Another important factor is that no state from India has the right to move away from it. Question number 12 is, who calls the Constitution of India as quasi-federal? Who calls the Constitution of India as quasi-federal? So this is K.C. Weir. K.C. Weir has called the Constitution of India as the quasi-federal. There are so many scholars who have studied the Constitution of India, and these scholars have given different titles to the Constitution of India on the ground of their reading, their perception, their understanding. K.C. Weir calls quasi-federal, Maurice Jones calls bargaining federalism, Grenville Austin calls cooperative federalism, Ivor Jennings calls federation with a strong center. So these are the titles given to Indian federal system. Question number 13. Here comes the question number 13. Doctrine of separation of powers is the base of which constitution in the world? Doctrine of separation of powers is the base of which constitution in the world? This is the Constitution of the United States of America, which is having its base manifests from the doctrine of separation. And in fact, the presidential system is based on the doctrine of separation. Montesquieu wrote The Spirit of Laws, a famous book, and he's known for giving an idea of the separation of powers. The American polity is known for the concept of separation of powers. Question number 14. What is parliamentarian system? Parliamentarian system is a type of system where parliament is at the center of entire polity. Voters don't elect their top leadership directly. Instead, they elect the parliament, and the government or the executive actually take its origin from the parliament itself and is accountable to the parliament. Parliament not only controls the executive, it gives birth to executive, and executive can remain in power until it has the faith, trust of the parliament. Another important feature of parliamentarian system is that it controls the finance as well. The financial structure is fueled by the decisions, by the policies taken by the parliament. No taxes can be imposed. No taxes can be imposed on the without the consent of parliament. Parliament elects the top leadership as well. So parliament has several roles. It is always at the center. It is pivot of this kind of system. That is the main. These are the main aspects of a parliamentarian system. What is the presidential system? Question number 15 is, friends, presidential system is a type of system where president remains at the center of entire polity. President is elected directly or indirectly by the people, and generally by an electoral college. People elect an electoral college which subsequently elects the president, as exactly what happens in the United States of America. President has a fixed term and cannot be removed without the process of impeachment, which is one of the toughest processes across the polities of the world. And since president is at the center of presidential system, that is why it is called the presidential system. What is separation of powers? Question number 16. What is separation of powers? As long as separation of powers is concerned, it basically mentions that in the modern political system, the lawmaking power, the law execution power, and the power of punishment should not be centralized. It is considered that the powers of government should be exercised by different organs of the government, being separated from each other, being separated from one another. Law-making bodies like Parliament in India or the US Congress, and the executive, that is President in the United States of America, or in Britain like Prime Minister, like India, and the judiciary, they should be separated. So what is important to understand that there are three organs of the government, and these three organs function separately, like legislature, executive, and judiciary. They are separated from each other. However, they are not separated completely, comprehensively. There is a coordination among these organs of the government. Earlier in ancient times, you would have studied from textbook that all these powers were centralized either on a king, in a king, or in a family, or in an institution. So modern polities are generally based on democracies, and concentration of power is not considered compatible to the democratic systems. That is why separation of power is important. Question number 17 comes, what is collective responsibility? What is collective responsibility? Friends, collective responsibility is a very important principle of parliamentarian system. Actually, the government in its entirety is responsible to the popular house of parliament. That is called collective responsibility. Just an example. For an example, if the Minister of Government of India does something, so only he is not accountable to the House. Entire government is accountable to the House, to Lok Sabha. So the government as a unit functions and is accountable to the people through Lok Sabha. That's very important, and it is called the collective responsibility. Only the minister of concerned department, concerned ministry is not accountable. These are all the minister. This is entire government in the leadership of Prime Minister responsible to the popular House of Parliament. Now comes 18 question number 18. Is Indian Constitution parliamentarian system? Is to that of British, which means in simple terms, does Indian parliamentarian system is similar to that of British parliamentarian system? A big no, not at all. Indian parliamentarian system is inspired from the British parliamentarian system, but it is not exactly the same. British Parliament is called sovereign. British Parliament is so powerful that laws made by British Parliament can be challenged nowhere. There is no judicial mechanism in Britain where the laws passed by the British Parliament can be scrutinized. However, in India, it's different. Indian Parliament is not a sovereign body. The laws passed by the Indian Parliament can be scrutinized when Supreme Court exercises the judicial review. As per the judicial review, the Supreme Court, the judiciary can scrutinize the laws passed by the Parliament of India. Besides, in Britain, there is monarchy. So the transfer of power moves from one generation to another generation on the principles of monarchy. However, in India, the head of this state is president is elected by the Parliament, by an electoral college which consists of the elected members of Parliament as well as the state lawmaking bodies. Question number 19. What is Prime Minister government? What is Prime Ministerial government? Actually, Prime Ministerial government is a term which is used negatively because it is the scholars, the commentators who study the constitutions, who study the polities, different polities, especially parliamentarian democracies, they find that this is a tendency, instinct of parliamentarian democracy which heads gradually from a parliamentarian system to a prime ministerial system. Prime ministers become so powerful that the parliament, the role of parliament circulates around about the decisions taken by the prime minister. So if prime ministers are very powerful, the parliament becomes only a rubber stamp after the decisions of the prime minister. That is why the parliamentarian systems are termed as prime ministerial systems as well. However, there are different conditions as well. There are different situations as well. We can understand from our own polities as well. When the government got the full-fledged majority in the Lok Sabha, and obviously we have seen that prime ministers are very powerful. They have taken very strong decisions. And however, whenever there was coalition government, such tendencies have been obstructed. So it is not necessary that every parliamentarian system heads towards prime ministerial system, but yes, occasionally we can find the tendencies emanating in parliamentarian system. Question number 20. Does the Constitution of India establish the synthesis between the parliamentarian sovereignty and judicial supremacy? I repeat, question number 20. Does the Constitution of India establish the synthesis between the parliamentarian sovereignty and judicial supremacy? Yes, of course. We are not just like British system. Ours is a different path. However, it resembles the British parliamentarian system, but it is not completely as a whole. The US Constitution provides the provisions of due process of law. The US Constitution provides the provisions of due process of law. However, the Indian Constitution mentions procedure established by law given by in Article 21. So the due process of law, which means that the US Constitution provides ample power to the US judiciary. It is said that Constitution in America is what US judiciary interprets. So the critics calls the Supreme Court of America, Supreme Court of United States of America, as the third chamber of US Congress. And in Britain, the situation is totally different. The Parliament is supreme, Parliament is sovereign. As I mentioned earlier also, the laws passed by the British Parliament cannot be scrutinized, unlike the judicial scrutiny in the United States of America or India. So India has adopted a middle path. It can be said to be the synthesis between the parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. Question number 21 here comes. In Indian judicial system similar to that of USA, is Indian judicial system similar to that of USA? No, it is not true. Indian judicial system is not exactly what the system is practiced in the United States of America. Indian judicial system is integrated. For whole India, there is a single line of judicial system. Supreme Court at the top, high courts, then lower courts, district courts. In the United States of America, federal laws are enforced by the federal judiciary and the state laws are enforced by the state judiciary, and these provisions, these practices are not found in the Indian political system. Question number 22. Are fundamental rights absolute in India? Very interesting question. Are fundamental rights absolute in India? Not at all. No, they are not. There are reasonable restrictions. Fundamental rights in India, they are fundamental but not absolute. For example, freedom of speech and expression mentioned in Article 19(1)(a), which says that every citizen shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression. This is a fundamental right, not absolute. Article 19(1)(2) talks about some reasonable restriction. There are 8 grounds on which reasonable restrictions can be imposed on the freedom of speech and expression, like contempt of court. If freedom of speech and expression damages the relationship of India with any foreign country. So there are 6 fundamental rights, but none of them is absolute. There are reasonable restrictions. Besides, Parliament can amend even Part 3 of the Constitution, that is fundamental right. Fundamental rights can be amended by the Parliament of India. This is also the reason. Next reason is that fundamental rights can be suspended during emergency. Article 352 gives power to the President of India to amend, to suspend the fundamental rights during an emergency, national emergency. But remember, Article 20 and 21 cannot be amended during even emergencies. So these provisions, like reasonable restrictions, amendment procedure by the Parliament, and suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. So these 3 are some important features which tell that these 3 are important aspects which prove that fundamental rights in the Constitution of India are not absolute, they are fundamental. Question number 23. Who said that the DPSP, that is Directory Principle of State Policy, is the moral feature in the Indian Constitution? Very interesting and very important. Who said that the Directory Principles of State Policy is the moral feature of the Constitution of India? So this was The architect of Indian Constitution, the chairperson of drafting committee, Baba Sahab Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had said that the DPSP, or the Directory Principles of State Policy, is the novel feature in the Indian Constitution, is the novel feature in the Indian Constitution. Question number 24. Which part of Indian Constitution aims to establish social and economic democracy in the country? Which part aims to establish social and economic democracy in India? Obviously, part 4, that is DPSP, Directory Principles of State Policy. If you go through the Directory Principles of State Policy or DPSP, you can easily understand that yes, the gist, the sum and substance of part 4 is that India heads towards a social and economic democracy. Question number 25 is, what is the main difference between part 3 and part 4? See, part 3 talks about fundamental rights, part 4 talks about Directory Principles of State Policy. Both are very important, but what lacks with part 4 is that judiciary doesn't stand after part 4, which means these are not justiciable. However, fundamental rights or part 3 is justiciable, which means that if fundamental rights are violated, there is a Supreme Court as the guardian to protect the fundamental rights. But in case of Directory Principles of State Policy, the execution part solely depends on the state, solely depends on the government, whether government wishes to implement it or not. For example, Article 40 of Indian Constitution, which is of part 4 of Directory Principles of State Policy, it mentions about the establishment of PRIs or Panchayati Raj institutions. Panchayati Raj institution was established after making 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992. So, the provision came in 1949, but it was implemented in 1992. In the same way, right to elementary education, Article 45. So, you can understand that part 3 and part 4 are different. There are so many other differences, but one of the fundamental differences between part 3 and part 4 is that judiciary stands after part 3 as guardian, which is not in case of Directory Principles of State Policy or part 4. Question number 26 comes, are fundamental duties a part of Constitution of India right from its beginning, right from its inception? No, fundamental duties are not the original parts of Indian Constitution. They were incorporated by making 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Question number 27. What is 86th Constitutional Amendment Act 2002? What is 86th Constitutional Amendment Act 2002? Friends, it's very important, as I mentioned earlier. This amendment transformed Article 45, which mentions about the right to free and compulsory education to the children. After making 86th Constitutional Amendment in 2002, the right to elementary education has been added to Article 21 as 21A. That's why it's a very important fundamental right. Now, the children between the age of 6 to 14 have the right to free education, right to education, right to elementary education. Question number 28. Is India a secular state? Yes, India is a secular state, but remember that there was no term as a secular right from the very inception of the Constitution of India. When 42nd Amendment Act was passed in 1976, secular as a term was added in the preamble of the Constitution. On that basis, we can say, yes, India is a secular state. Besides, Article 14, 15, 16, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 of Part 3 provides the religious freedom, the religious practices, and restricts to make any discrimination on the ground of religion. On these basis, on these grounds, we can say that yes, India is a secular state. Article 29. What is Article 44? Article 44 basically is related to Uniform Civil Code, UCC. UCC refers to the same laws, similar laws for all Indians. Question number 30. What is universal adult franchise? Question number 30 is about universal adult franchise. What is universal adult franchise? It means that anybody who has attained the age of 18 has the right to vote, irrespective of any kind of his or her individual background, caste, creed, religion, region, race, gender, whatsoever. And earlier, the age of right to vote was 21, but 61st Constitutional Amendment Act 1989 made the provision to reduce the age from 21 to 18. Since then, 18 years or above, citizens of India can have the right to vote. They can vote since 9th Lok Sabha onwards. Interesting thing is that India adopted universal adult franchise right from the very inception of its constitution. However, other constitutions, including America, adopted it later on in the 60s. That is the unique feature of the Constitution of India or the Indian political system. Here comes question number 31. Does the Constitution of India provisions the citizenship like the Constitution of America? No, not at all. In a federal system, generally, in an ideal federal system, the dual citizenship is a feature, which means that a citizenship of the whole state, as well as the whole nation, the whole country, as well as the unit province or the state where the citizen is living. So dual citizenship is there. You can easily understand in the example that I'm going to give. Take for example, in America, there is a dual citizenship. So a person who is living in Florida is a citizen of Florida as well as the citizen of the United States of America. But here in India, we know that Indian federal system is not like that of the United States of America. We have an ideal blend of both the features, federal as well as unitary form of government. So we have single citizenship. Whether somebody is living in Tamil Nadu or Uttar Pradesh or Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh, irrespective of his or her state, he or she is an Indian national. The single citizenship is given by the Constitution of India. So citizenship of India is not similar to that of the United States of America. Question number 32. How many types of emergencies are mentioned in the Constitution? Answer is, there are 3 types of emergencies mentioned in the Constitution of India. Article 352 mentions the national emergency. Article 356 mentions the state emergency. This is also termed as the president rule. And Article 360 talks about the financial emergency. Question number 33. What happens in emergency? What is emergency? Actually, emergency provisions in Indian constitutions have been adopted to deal with any unwanted situation, unwanted condition. We know very well that no political system is concrete, no political system is full and complete in itself. There are lacunas in every polity. Some are good in federal system, some political systems are good in a unitary system. It is very well known that during emergencies, single decision making centers, single decision making capacities are essential. So that's why intelligently Indian constitution makers have added the provision in the Constitution of India to transform the Indian political system from federal to unitary during emergency. That's why they are very important. And during emergency, union government becomes all powerful In fact, the federal structure is changed into unitary form. That is the main transformation takes place during emergencies. Question number 34. What is 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992? As I mentioned earlier, Article 40 of Directive Principles of State Policy was talking about the provision, the establishment of Panchayati Raj institution, which actually was executed in 1992 when Parliament of India passed the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 talks about mentions about the PRIs and gives PRIs the constitutional status. What is 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992? Likewise, 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992, the 74th Constitutional Amendment 1992 is very important, and it gives the constitutional recognition to urban local government. Question number 36. How many schedules are in the Constitution of India? Originally, there were 8 schedules in the Constitution of India, but currently there are 12 schedules in the Constitution of India. First schedule talks about union and state territories. Second, provision related to emoluments of presidents, vice president, governors, etc. Third schedule talks about oath or affirmation. Fourth schedule mentions about allocation of seats in the Rajya Sabha. And fifth schedule is the administration and control of scheduled areas and scheduled tribes. Sixth schedule talks about the administration of tribal areas in the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram. Seventh schedule talks about the division of powers between union and states. Eighth schedule mentions language recognized by the Constitution. Ninth schedule is related to provisions related to land reforms. 10th schedule is about the anti-defection laws. 11th schedule mentions about the PRIs. And 12th schedule talks about urban local government. Question number 38. What is 44th Amendment? 44th Amendment 1978 actually repealed the right to property. This act repealed the right to property, and 39 question comes. Which constitution in the world had preamble for the first time? So USA is known as the precursor of this practice, where the preamble was adopted. Question number 40. Who introduced the objective resolution in the Constituent Assembly? Very interesting. Who introduced the Constitution in the Constitution, the objective resolution? So this was India's first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, introduced the objective resolution in the Constituent Assembly. So I'm sure that these questions, these interactions are going to be very informative and are helpful in the competitive exams. Thanks for listening to me.